Welcome to I'm From the Internet, a podcast about somethingawful.com, the goons, and their consequences. I am Chicago extraordinaire Winslow Dumaine, and I'm sitting here with friend of the pod, Jaybrandstetter.
Atlantic City somebody.
The co-host since episode 1, Jaybrandstetter. Jay, how have you been, man?
Oh, pretty good. Just I'd say it was pretty busy. I had to get the wheels replaced on the wheelchair van, and because it's been modified, like it's hard for them to get it on the thing to do some of the stuff. So just one of those things, like having to deal with a modified vehicle. It's fun.
I bet that's interesting for the mechanics, though.
I bet, you know? Especially, it's very funny because, like the people who do the wheelchair vans are always like, regular mechanics have no idea what they're doing. It's like, to be fair, they do something because it's not factory standard. Yeah, anytime you're doing with a modified vehicle. But, it's fun.
Do you ever watch, there's a Reddit for it, but there's a YouTube channel for it called Just Rolled Into the Shop. Are you familiar with that?
No, but I think I've heard of that.
Oh, buddy. It's one of those things where, like, the most beautiful part of the internet is the fact that, like, there are, in the way that, like, there are subcultures for everything, and they have their own, there's algorithms for everybody, right? So, like, back when I was playing Hearthstone, I would follow other Hearthstone players, and I would look at their stuff, and they would just post a screenshot, and it's just their cards, and to a layperson, they have no idea what this means, but I would look at that and go, like, I could do the mental math in my head, like the calculations of what they just had. I do it with Balatro. Somebody just sent me a screenshot of Balatro, and I looked at it and I go, oh man, just by the faces of these cards, I know that there's some crazy shit about to happen, right?
Oh yeah, it's like seeing old net hack screenshots people would share around. I'm like, that's just an @ symbol. Yeah. I don't get it, man.
Yeah. And so Just Rolled Into the Shop is like, it's just TikToks and Reels or shared videos from mechanics who are like, yeah, this guy just rolled into the shop, and one of them is like, they said that there's some like the car is running kind of slow, and it's like a Mercedes fucking S series or whatever, and then they pop the hood and there's a possum living in it, and the car has 100,000 miles and they've never changed the oil once, and like. There's shit where, like, they put in, like, oh, you put oil in your car, so they put in, like, canola oil.
Oh, jeez.
And it fucks, and it's the mechanics looking through it. Or, like, they pull in a car, and it's, like, they open the door, and it's just, like, full of roaches. And, yeah, it's really, it makes you want to go outside and kiss your car. Don't tell the people over at, well, there's your problem that I want to kiss my car sometimes, but no, it just makes you appreciate, like, being an expert and having to deal with the main, like, the majority of people. It's just like you see these mechanics who have truly seen it all, and you're just like seeing the crazy shit that they deal with. It's like talking to a nurse about the worst thing they've seen.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, that's worth a watch though. But yeah, I've just been taking a little bit of time. I have like one weekend between shows, so I've been chilling a little bit. Got a lot of art done for the card game. I'm also doing that big ass rebrand for my table and my website, so I have a bunch of new stickers in and some new stuff that I haven't released yet. Yeah, man. I'm really excited about this new stuff that's about to come out.
Yeah, the new banner looks really good. Here at Club Fred uses the drugs bag that Winslow sells the stores vapes in, so it's very fun.
Yeah, no, my banner is like, I want my whole table to kind of look contiguous now, and also like one step beyond just buying shit from Amazon and putting it on a table, right?
Yeah.
In terms of like tablecloth, like I'm not a reseller. No, everybody knows I'm not a reseller, I hope, but yeah, so like my card game,
someone selling your picture online, and we're like, say,
yeah, perfect. No, my card game has this an ink painting that I did that I've edited to be like black and red, very muddy color, and so I've based the entire table spread around that color palette, including buying dark red cotton tablecloths and then like soaking them in like different dilutions of India ink. So it's kind of like the cloth itself is rotten and creeping with mold, and it looks really cool. And above it all, I have a huge banner above my table that has my store name, which is Defensive Wounds, which it's called Defensive Wounds because that's DW, and my name is Winslow Domain, so it's DWWD.
I didn't know that aspect of it. That's very fun.
Yeah. And then the picture of me is the photo that was taken when I got my Costco card. So it's this like grainy, blown out,
I was wondering why it looked like that. It being taken with the Costco scan gun makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And then the store motto, which is just superior quality products for inferior quality people. So yeah, it's very fun, and it's continuing I'm trying to trend back towards what I used to do, which was like gritty, grimy, dark industrial art. And since then I've obviously gotten into a lot of the comedy, humor, fantasy art with the tarot deck and stuff like that. And I want to get back to the rust and ruin that was kind of the texture of my original work. So yeah, that's what I've been doing. Sorry, I didn't mean to peak your levels over there.
No, that's fun. It's very fun. Yeah,
yeah, man.
I've been commissioning a friend of mine to make me a logo, so I've been kind of going through a similar design process. Brandstetter is German for a place that's been cleared by a forest fire. It's because they built cities in the aftermath and named the place Brandstetter, and then people who lived there were named. That became a surname. So I figured that's very appropriate with my whole backstory. So the logo is like a little panda in a burned out forest looking at the stars. It's very cute. I like
wow.
It. So yeah,
that's so cool, man. I love that. I love really specific words like that. Yeah. Well, I guess speaking of logos, before we move on to the next thing, the sticker that I'm really proud of that's coming out soon, I made the logo look like it's like a Union sticker, right? But the logo is binoculars peering out through window blinds. So like the blinds are all crumpled down, and the binoculars are looking out, and in very stark red letters it says, "Proud member of the Paranoid Schizophrenic Gang Stalkers Union. Support your local 24/7."
24/7 is very good.
Yeah, I'm very happy with that one. But yeah, we gotta get to the episode because I am going to have a late lunch, early dinner with a future collaborator that I'm nervous and excited for, because this is a very cool person that I've followed for a while, and I can't say who, but I can say their first name is Condoleezza. So we're very excited for that. But Jay, you have a fun story for me today.
Yeah, the episode we're doing today is going to be the most recent saga we've ever covered because this just happened last month. The reason why I kind of expedited this is because it made the news. Right. The screenshot I have here is from PC Gamer. They have a headline here: "Tabletop Game Forumite achieves posting godhood, emerging from the void after 100,000 hour, 11-year ban to continue the same argument from 2013.
It bums me out that this is we have to keep this episode tight, because I could talk about this for fucking ever, dude. I love this so much because this is like you're how you mentioned like posting Bushido and like the ethics of posting, and I love it so much because, well, you I know a little bit of the story, but yeah. You correct me if I'm wrong here. You could be probated by anybody, by the mods, right? But being banned, you could appeal a ban. Is that correct?
You can't really appeal it. What you could do is, if you get banned, you just pay $10 and you unban yourself. It's like they call it like the $10, like the tax, basically. But when you're on probation, even if you're banned and you register, you can't post on the forums. You can still read them, but you can't interact with them until your probation runs out. So like the metaphor people use is like a permaban is killing someone, like $100,000 probation is turning them into a ghost. It's like they're haunting the forums. Wow. It's
That's
almost
so
kind of like,
funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just it's like the milder thing by technicality is more lethal. You know what I mean? Like, it's like sometimes you want the most egregious sentencing because then you could be like, Your Honor, this is an egregious sentencing, and then the rollback from that would actually be more lenient than the first sentencing that you could get. Yeah, it's so fucking funny. Yeah. So, anyways,
we're going to dig into that some. Yeah. So this saga focuses on a poster named Etherwind. I pulled them up here. They registered April 22nd, 2008, and we have a very funny thing on their profile. There's a little thing of text here I've highlighted. July 13th, 2024, 1:24 p.m. If we're still alive, I'll see you then. So they called this shot.
So hold on. Can you edit your posts after being...
You can edit your profile whenever you want. It's like you can update it whenever... You can like change your little bio or your info in there. So,
okay.
So after they were probated, they put that there. It's like, I'll be back.
That's so funny. Okay, so yeah, they that's not a post, that's their bio.
Yeah, that's their bio on their profile on the forums there, yeah.
Okay, that's funny. Yeah, he made a notification in his Google Calendar, and he's coming back for that. I noticed recently that I have a notification in the middle of October that says start shopping for stocking stuffers. When you go to Omaha, don't eat like a horse. And I know that I made that date in my phone last year coming back from Omaha, realizing that everyone else bought me more cooler stocking stuffers, and all I did was just eat like a horse in Omaha. So that's going to repeat every year for the rest of my life.
It works, man. That's how I remember to take my vitamins every day. Got an alarm.
Yeah. Dude, it's crazy having Tim Walz be the potential vice president for Harris, because he's a Nebraska guy, and like he's on there like giving speeches making references to like restaurants I've been to. Like,
I didn't even think about that. How good it must feel to have like someone from your area like on the national stage like that.
It's funny because he's like he had a speech in Omaha or in Nebraska, at least. I don't know if it was Omaha, but he was talking about like, do you think Donald Trump understands the significance of Carhenge? Do you know what Carhenge is?
Yeah, Stonehenge with cars. I've ever seen pictures of all the time. I love roadside attractions. That's like one of my weird little interests because I grew up in Florida and it's full of them.
Okay, so yeah, you'd know. Yeah, so it's just a Stonehenge made of cars, and it's just the middle of Nebraska, and it's just the dumbest thing you've ever seen, but it's also like, you know, in the world of dumb things being beautiful, kind of like the rat hole. It's just like this guy did this because he could. That's great.
Yeah.
I love it.
It's a landmark.
And it just to see the guy who might be vice president doing it is just very funny.
That's how I felt when he was talking about playing the Dreamcast. I was just like, oh man, we finally got a Dreamcast player in the White House.
Yeah, God. I hope people who are like really excited about my card game aren't listening to this episode, because I just got Balatro, and like I swear to God, I'm going to release my game, but this game is fucking addictive.
I've heard that so much, I'm not even playing it. I'm just like, I'm good.
Everything I've heard about Slay the Spire, I'm like, I'm not going to play Slay the Spire because it's addictive. And then I got Balatro because I'm a fucking moron. Great game, for sure. But anyways.
Yeah, so
Etherwind.
I'd never heard of Etherwind before this. They mostly seem to post in the creative convention and as a creative writer. They have a thing on their avatar there about the Thunderdome. Thunderdome is a thing that the creative convention has where people do creative writing prompts and criticize each other. So that's going to come up later. And they're also a big...
That sounds awful.
Yeah, I've never really read it personally, but it's a pretty big writing community from what I can see. And but their big thing, and that this relates to, is they were in the traditional game subforum, which is for tabletop games like Dungeons and Dragons, board games, stuff like that. And they would argue with people a lot in a really unpleasant way, and they got a reputation really quickly as a miserable person to interact with. I went through their ban list, and I just pulled a random example here. There's a thread in traditional games. What's your worst experience with tabletop gaming? Part 2, where someone was telling a story about canceling a game they were organizing because a gay couple in the group wanted to play as furry characters when it clearly went against the established tone and lore of the setting. And so they were kind of sharing that as a funny story, and then then Etherwind chimes in here. You missed a golden opportunity. You should have ran it and made it a generic fantasy kingdom of humans that was rounding up all furries into concentration camps for forced labor. Either they take on the kingdom or they get ambushed as they start to get down to business, and you spend the time utterly beating their character senseless while the evil humans call them all sorts of speciesist names. It would have appealed to their persecution complex, and you'd have had a good laugh at their expense. This is 2009.
So much about that is difficult. Can we take a minute to talk about persecution?
Yes, let's talk about that. I'm glad you camped on that, because did you have anything you wanted to say for that, or do you want me to?
Oh, it's mostly just cusses. Because I keep coming back to this, man. I will defend to death all of my friends who are having experiences with gender and sexuality and identity to do whatever they want and live however they want. And there are just certain things where it's like, I will defend them to the ends of the earth. And I have the right-wing people screaming all the time. They're like, well, what about women's sports? What about this other thing that you've never cared about? It's like, guys, I don't actually care. You can't get me to hate these people, because at the end of the day, I'd rather people be happy with who they are than winning a medal or a trophy. That's less important to me than somebody just being happy with who they are. The whole thing about hating furries, it's just I think it's still the main post on Something Awful to this day. The one post there, as far as I recall, is just, "Dear furries, we are sorry."
Yeah, Dear furries, we were wrong. I have the person who wrote that is coming on here in the future, so that's going to be fun.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it's just this thing that's they're just having fucking fun, right? Are there parts of furry culture that are I think even as a furry, other people would be like, okay, that's weird. Baby fur can be kind of sexually kind of weird. There's definitely some sexual parts of furry culture that are weird. Name a subculture anywhere that doesn't have some weird shit going on. The people that are screaming about furries today are the people who are listening to Kid Rock sing songs about having sex with children, and they're hooting and hollering and loving it, It's just so fucking frustrating.
Yeah, and the term persecution itself is really annoying to me, because it was a great example of taking an admittedly somewhat embarrassing and tone deaf example of someone complaining about actual mistreatment, and then using that to make fun of it and justify further mistreatment. I'm sure some annoying teenagers might have made some unflattering comparisons or whatever, but then using that to justify it's oh, you want to be persecuted? Huh? I'll show you. It's
it's this thing where I fell for this my own self, because this is an embarrassing part of my own life. Forgive me if I'm making clacking noises. I'm doing promo for the pod in the pod. But when it was first around, I was on Tumblr in action on Reddit, because I was these social justice people are crazy. And I was reading that stuff, and it didn't make sense because it was a lot of rad femme stuff written by people who probably didn't do a lot of the reading, or they were conveying their ideas not terribly well. It was very much in the Anita Sarkeesian days, where there was just there's some people who really knew what they were talking about, and then there's a lot of people beneath them that were just hooting and hollering and making the points less eloquently and less convincingly. And I was responding to fucking 13-year-olds who got their education from 17-year-olds who got their education from somebody who made a video about a book that they half read, right? And all of that's stupid. I was being stupid by engaging in that stuff, and when I look back at it now, I'm thank God I got out, because the people who were screaming about furries and screaming about social justice warriors and trans people and all this, all of the people who didn't get out are the most miserable psychopaths you've ever met.
Oh yeah, for real. Yeah, and
you know,
and I will say, like, I've read the book. It came from something awful, and like the first half of it is pretty good, I think. But there's like a weird thing it does is the second half is like this kind of weird equivocation where it explores like Tumblr culture and basically does a weird thing about like, well, Tumblr kind of radicalizes too if you think about it in a way that was just like, I don't know, man. People from Tumblr didn't do mass shootings, so maybe we should. Well, I guess some of them
they radicalize them in different ways, because I think that when we hear the word radicalization, we think white guy with a gun. And, like, for sure, that's the most visible and loudest form of radicalization. Absolutely. However, I do think that a lot of, like, the big, really intense reactionary TERF stuff started on Tumblr in response to other things from Tumblr. And so, like, it is a whole ecosystem. I'm not saying that Tumblr or people from Tumblr are bad or wrong or evil or anything like that, but like any website that allows you to control the media that's being put in your face, which is basically all of them, right? Anything that's algorithmically generated is going to have a degree of radicalization, because that's what echo chambers do.
Yeah. No, I don't think I'm glad they explored it. I'm glad that it was. I will say I do enjoy the book. Like, a lot of people, Something Awful made fun of the title because it makes it sound like it's Something Awful is literally responsible. Like, you know, it was well researched. They did a lot of primary research. We had Fred's in it. He has a signed copy of it in his closet somewhere. I put up somewhere. So
that's great.
It's well researched. It's by the guy who did the web comic. The Damage. I can't remember the name. He used to be a web comic guy. It was really good.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so
but scroll up. You scrolled past a post here. I wanted to see what that was.
Okay, yeah. So Etherwind, there was a follow up. They got some pushback for that post, and then this is what they actually got in trouble for. They're like, "Are you a complete moron, or do you genuinely consider paraphilia, specifically one involving anthropomorphic animals, to be a legitimate sexual orientation as defined socially and by law, equivalent to being straight, bisexual, gay, or transgendered? I just want to know, as if it's the former, that's fair enough. If it's the latter, you seriously have a screw loose." And then they go on to be like, "Oh, you think pedophiles are a protected class," and stuff like that. Just
I like how the crux of it all is I understand why I'll look at a guy and I'll be like, that's a hot guy. I don't want to have sex with him, but I understand that's a really attractive guy. And the reason I feel that way is because he makes me feel ugly. You know what I mean? I have enough of, I'm bi enough to feel terrible about myself. That's what I feel, right? And like, I look at other people's things, like furry stuff, where it's like, it does nothing for me sexually. Like, it doesn't turn me on, it doesn't excite me. I'm not excited when I see, like, sexually or otherwise, like, I don't care about seeing furry art or people dressed in fursuits. Like, it's just a thing that happens, right? But like, why do people fucking care this much? You know, like, if you're able to look past two gay people in love, why can't you look past, maybe it's two gay people who also like fucking fursuits? You know, it's not all like shit and diapers and like jacking off into a baby crib or whatever psycho shit that whatever, like, the evilest thing that they could find on 4chan or like the depths of DeviantArt, and then they post it on Something Awful and they're like, all of them are like this. It's like, there's the tendency on Something Awful to blame the entire fur community for the actions of the most egregious few of them. However, like, you can't do the opposite. You can't be like, hey man, you know, the most psychotically evil thing a straight guy has ever done is also on your plate too. You know?
Yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah, so that was just an example, but I have like their sheet here. You can see just in the span of a couple months after they registered, they got multiple probations, they got a ban. They just kept getting in trouble over and over and kept posting the same way. Like, he kind of reminds me of how people reacted to my posts on Something Awful, where he's someone who is actively toxic and unpleasant, but nobody seems to like them, but also nobody in charge is willing to pull the trigger and kick them out, so they just keep sticking around annoying people for years. Like, except never crossing the line. Except this guy did cross the line. You know.
Well, I was excited about this guy right up until I found out he's such a dickhead.
Oh yeah. This was a while ago. So this is Valentine's Day 2013 is when the moderators decided they'd had enough. So this was in a thread for the New World of Darkness, which is by White Wolf. It's basically like a game where you fight werewolves with shotguns. It's urban fantasy. And they're having a conversation. And there's a lot of heated conversations about it because, of course, there's stuff like, you know, like if you use, like, can you use indigenous creatures in this setting? Is that appropriate? Stuff like that. Like, people have very heated conversations. So people arguing about their politics, and Etherwind replies to someone, I broadly consider New World of Darkness as politics and social commentary through the perspective of death of the author. And while I know that's a figurative expression, your reply makes me wish it was at least partly literal commentary. And then, user was put on probation for this post below that. Because, yeah.
Two questions. Is it just a bug of the forums for user was put on probation for this post is listed twice?
That means they got multiples. First, they got hit with one. That's the thing, too, is like larger probations take more time. They need to be approved by an administrator, but shorter ones can be done automatically. So usually someone will be hit with like a 6-hour probation immediately to keep them from stop posting. And then when the administrator has a chance to approve it, they'll be hit with the bigger one later. So in this case, that was just the one to get them to stop. And then the one after that is for the 100,000 hour probation, which I have right here. Okay, you are done here. User loses posting privileges for 6 hours, and then 12 minutes later, user loses posting privileges for 100,000 hours.
Yeah, well, I mean, I imagine that it tops out at 99,999, or did they just put it an arbitrary 100,000 hours?
Yeah, you have the option to put in a length. I think they've said, like, you can put in a length that's longer than, like, the heat death of the universe or something. Like, you can do some ridiculous math number. But, like, yeah, 100, it's like you have a drop-down menu of pre-selected ones, and the 100,000 hour probation is the longest one on the drop-down that you can select. And it's kind of used as a special punishment. Like I mentioned earlier, think about it turning someone into a ghost. Like, like it was instituted in May of 2005, and it was usually something that was reserved for particularly egregious offenders. It was like to send a message to someone, or maybe for lifetime achievements. And one of the first big 100Ks was a poster named Big Peeler, who was a guy who would make up stories. Like, if you've ever seen, like, Tales from the Zoo, I think Justin Wang covered that. That was a Big Peeler story. He's done a lot of stuff like that. And they got really popular, and then the success got to his head, and he became, like, a huge asshole on the forums. And eventually, Lotax hit him with a 100K. And that was, so he was, like, one of the first big ones. Also, I got one. Actually, I didn't just get one, I got 3. They hit all of my accounts at once. Like that scene in Breaking Bad when they have to do all the prison assassinations at once. They just hit all of my 3 accounts at once. I was just like, I'm impressed. It's very hard to get the moderators to take action on there. So for them to do like a coordinated triple strike like that was fantastic. I was like, you got me.
That's awesome. They knew. I mean, this is God, dude. We should do an episode on internet horror. Jaybrandstetter, or what was your? Can you say your name? Are you comfortable saying your name?
It'll come up again. Yeah, the names. It was a Guy Man, sleeveless, and of science. I chose Guy Man because as a furry, I thought the idea of using like a superhuman name was really funny. Like, hello, I am Guy Man, the angry human boy.
That's so. I didn't think about it like that. Of just like a wolf trying to fit into human society. God, there's a Nick Swardson joke that he did like 15 years ago talking about like Jane Goodall living amongst the apes. And he's like, do you think that like living amongst the apes, because she did that for years on end, do you think that she ever like picked up on any of their behaviors? Do you think like Jane Goodall throws her shit at people now?
I've heard that one, yes, it's very good.
Yeah, and then he's just like, or what about, it won't translate over audio, but he's so good because he like he hunches his shoulders forward and he's like acting like an ape who's like a nervous ape, because he's like, or what about an ape that like learned from Jane Goodall and then like tries to enter human society, and he just kind of like lopes around on stage and he just goes, hey. And it's so fucking funny, just the idea of like an ape showing up and just being like, football, and that's the only thing that they know. Where's
that Planet of the Apes prequel? I want to see that.
Yeah, where all the apes, all the apes gorilla, are just like dudes hanging out watching TV. You know, it's like when the Taliban finally took over Afghanistan, and then they had to work like 9-to-5 jobs, and they couldn't just be in the back of a technical driving around shooting at shit all day. And they're just like, wait, this shit sucks, dude. You just turned Afghanistan into Pennsylvania. This sucks. So, but yeah. Anyways, let's do a top down on you, but never reveal that it's you.
That'd be very. That'd be a good. If we ever get a live episode with like a lot of people who aren't regular listeners, that'd be a very good bit to do for that.
Oh fuck yeah, that'd be so funny. Yeah, we could do my 1 or 2 posts on something awful and just embarrass the living shit out of me, and then I'm not going to finish that sentence. All right. Yeah, anyways, go on.
Okay, yeah, so 100,000 hours, that is roughly 11.4 years. That's 4,166 days, 595 weeks, 132 months. And it has been more than 11.4 years since 2005. So people coming back from 100,000 hour probations has actually kind of been a thing for a while. It's just that nobody ever really did anything funny with it. Usually they just come back and they make a big deal about the fact that they came back, and then they would immediately get punished again because they're being obnoxious, and also that's like a really funny response to that. So I'm making a big deal about being back. It's like, well, not anymore.
You know, I was thinking about this last night. Like, a fun party game could be like, you get a bunch of people and you have to like Kramer the room, where one by one you go outside and then you have to burst into the room and you have to say the funniest thing that you can as the first thing you say when you enter the room.
That's great. Competitive Kramering.
Yeah, the idea of this is kind of the same thing. Is like you have to think of what's the funniest thing that you can say right when you show up after your 11 years, right? So, just to give perspective, the video games of the year in 2005 were Psychonauts, Resident Evil 4, Shadow of Colossus, Fear, the first God of War in 2005. So, like, he's showing up after God of War has already been rebooted and given a sequel. That's so funny. That's so much fucking time. He's like, in the entirety of that time, except for like the last 18 months, we've been at war. So,
yeah, like, since we're talking about this now, to give you an idea of how much time that is, my 100,000 hour probation would have run out on Tuesday, August 10th, 2032. So we are still 8 years off from mine ending. That's how much time this is. And I have, like, all this podcasting stuff was, like, several years into that already. So
that's fucking wild.
A lot of time, yeah. So I guess another like 100,000 hour one. This kind of was a poster named CAD, K-H-A-D. They were just kind of like a notoriously bad poster. And when his 100,000 hour probation ran out, he came back and made a thread announcing that he was there again. But he used the hot thread tag, which automatically gets your thread gassed and you banned for it. So he was so excited to come back, he accidentally auto banned, which was like tripping on the door frame when you Kramer in like that.
You can't grandstand. You can't laugh at, like, don't laugh at your own jokes coming in here, man.
Yeah, also, I need to mention, like, Kramering, it's very funny, so it's something awful. On the political subforums, they use Kramering as a verb to describe someone, like, running into the thread to argue about something. So just, when people talk about people Kramering into the thread all the time, so that has a different association with that. I like yours more, honestly.
It's functionally the same thing. Like, what's the funniest first thing that you can say to somebody? You know? Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess another more mundane reason for the lack of 100K returns is that usually if you're so addicted to the forums and that you become enough of a nuisance to get one, you just immediately register a new account and then you start posting in the same way in the same places and they recognize it and then you get banned for punishment evasion. So I think the most infamous example of this is a poster named Seraph84. They were perma-probed in 2015 and even now they still show up registering new accounts to just like spout incomprehensible Star Citizen and Bitcoin grudges every now and then. Like, this was like the original post that to give you an example of how they talk, like, here we go. This was in a Star Citizen thread. It's true that I am a cruel god, boys and girls, but I am not incapable of forgiveness. It's not too late. You can still lay down your keyboards, kneel, and pledge your ships and your lives to me. For those of you wise enough to do so, I may yet be merciful. Yours always in solidarity and compassion, Space Marshal Seraph. Just stuff like that and Bitcoins, and then, could you please define minors for me? Is there a specific age, fellow denizen of the World Wide Web? Yeah, that's what got him the perma probe. Go away, you creepy shithead. User loses privileges for 100,000 hours. Except, just in the immediate aftermath, October 15th, October 18th, October 22nd, just every couple of days, new accounts, and they still show up doing this. And like Seraph84, this person is 40 years old now, and they are still doing this. Like, it's a shame that Steve's on vacation now, because the Bitcoin thread that they mock when they post it, he's kind of like a nemesis there, because he registers every now and then to like post one of these things to try and argue with them. They just blank it and go, oh, it's Seraph again. So I'm sure he has like a funny anecdote about that.
Every once in a while, I'll find someone on Twitter whose their bio just says, "You block me equals I win." And it's like, I love that so much. We talk a lot about this stuff. We are people from the internet talking about the internet, right? And I always have to think, like, you have to lay this in context to people waiting for the bus. Because I see, you know, a middle-aged woman waiting for the bus while I'm driving around town. And I think about her, and I think, how would I explain to her that there's people on the internet who their whole identity is picking fights with people and constantly harassing them, and then they've made up a rule in their head that if the other person is like, "This is a waste of my time, you're blocked," that means that they surrendered and that they win.
Yeah, it's like the opposite of Kramering. It's like thinking of the most mean thing you can say when you're getting kicked out.
Yeah, and it's just so funny because, like, it's not just internet people who would look at that and go, "This is really pathetic. This is, like, so pathetic." And just thinking about, like, having to explain that, you know, the thing of the meme of, like, imagine having to tell this woman, you know, it's like, it's a picture, I did it on the Mayor of Silent Hill account. It's a picture of Dahlia Gillespie. And it's like, imagine telling the old crazy cult lady from Silent Hill 1, Dahlia Gillespie, that you have to use a QR code to get the menu. You know, like, and I just think about, like, the average person. Like, my mom just texted me the other day. He's like, "Hey, Winslow, what's OnlyFans?" And I had to explain her the whole thing about that. She did the same thing with 4chan. What's 4chan? Or what's this Q stuff about? Who's QAnon? And having to explain to her that there's people whose, like, their whole identity is functionally, they're just like kicking stray dogs, but on the internet. It's like, oh man, it's one of those things where I can't think of a type of person except for, like, Kiwi Farms people who would look at that and not think, get a fucking life, you goddamn loser. You know?
Yeah, I could make a feast out of this if this wasn't a shorter episode, because there was so much good stuff. We'll definitely come back to this again. Also, another thing was that it was relatively common for 100K probations to be overturned if the poster's friends complained enough, or if the moderator who punished them became disgraced. Like, there are a couple of...
interesting.
Yeah, like, there are a couple of pretty prolific FIAD posters who have had multiple 100K probations overturned by the years because the moderator who probed them later on, like, got ousted for doing something heinous, and then they were like, yeah, that was probably a bad shoot, let's give it another chance. Like, it keeps, like... And also because, you know, FIAD is something where, like, a lot of the forums do not like it, so, like, it's just a thing that happens. People do come back from it. It isn't the kiss of death, especially if you, like, demonstrate that you've, you know, improved over time. And in fact, I even found a QCS thread from 2018 where someone was arguing that Etherwind should be given clemency, which was weird because, like, this was years after the fact. The person doing it only registered, like, the year before. Like, I kind of hoped it was an alt of his, and this could be my blow up and be like, he was there the whole time. But no, it looks like it was just a coincidence that, like, yeah, someone was saying, like, hey, we should bring him back. And Facts Are Useless, who was a moderator at the time, shows up and goes, he was a bad poster for a long time, and I trust WP's judgment, who's the person who banned them. So, yeah, that was just a thing that would happen. People would make appeals sometimes. And every now and then I still see people doing that, for, like, making threads asking to free their friends or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense, and it also harkens back to a time when you could actually be friends with... this was a more like an interactional type of website rather than Twitter, which is just like, I put stuff out there and people like it, but that's not really a conversation starter. On Something Awful, you put something out there and people say words back to you, and you say words back to them, and it is a kind of conversation, right?
Exactly.
I think, I was thinking about this recently, is like, you know, I'm about to have this lunch with a very cool person, and if this fell through, we would have to do like a text-based thing or a Zoom meeting. But the reason why meeting in person and meeting, at least over voice, is like you interrupt me and I interrupt you, and because of that, we actually kind of spawn other ideas and have other things going on that might not be there when we're trying to keep a coherent text exchange, right?
Oh, definitely.
And yeah, and so like that, there's something that's lost in the transition from a like omnidirectional conversation of the forums with all of their faults and stuff like that, to the kind of generally unidirectional put content on the internet, and maybe sometimes people respond to it form of Twitter, right? I guess Twitch is actually even better than the forums because there's more of an interaction, but that's everybody talking to one person rather than a group of people, so
definitely. Yeah.
It's interesting in a lot of ways. I actually have a lot to say about that. Here we are.
Yeah, and I do think that it is good that they overturn those sometimes. Yeah, sometimes they do make mistakes, sometimes they do make bad shoots. I think it's good it's not carved in stone. It's like, yeah, maybe we have to try that again. And sometimes it hasn't worked out, I will admit, but sometimes it does. So, but yeah, so it was like, it was really surprising when on July 14th, 2024, Etherwind showed up in the current incarnation of the World of Darkness thread, because it had been so long, the original one had been closed, and they'd done like several other incarnations since then. So they show up in there quoting a reply from the 2013 thread and just continuing the conversation they had been banned in the middle of, as if nothing had happened. So I have their post here. It's like, well, it's funny to imagine it canceled. In all seriousness, I don't think it'll be out before 2016, TVH. We'll be happy to be proven wrong. Guess we'll wait and see on July 14th, 2024. Like, it's like, at first people thought, wait, was this post like queued up and just didn't go through because he did it so convincingly?
Under no circumstances do you have to hand it to Etherwind, but in this case, you kind of have to hand it to Etherwind.
I will say this is kind of a redemption for Etherwind when we get to the end bit here. So.
I do hope, because, like, again, I was never like a fucking bigoted person on the internet, right? Don't quote me on that. But, I was, a young asshole in my early years on the internet, and I probably did and said things that I regret, but it's been decades. And I've changed a lot of things, and so have you. And that's kind of like a going thing for this whole podcast is watching people change, or not. And so I do hope that Etherwind has adapted, or relinquished some of those, younger views. If you're listening, Etherwind, let us know.
That's why I was hyped to do this one, because it very much ties into those conversations we've had before. And before we move on, I will say there was one interesting thing about this I noticed was making the rounds is if you look at Etherwind's profile, beneath it, there's a little button that says soiled meat on it. And that's a donation tag. In 2018, when the Lotax was having medical issues and he needed money, he did a thing where if you donated money to something awful, you'd get a little tag under your name, and he just made up all these funny little like weird phrases for it. So soiled meat was the $30 donation amount. So Etherwind was at some point, like maybe they weren't regularly reading it, maybe they just saw the news and felt like helping out the site a little, but they donated to help it years after they were perma-pro. So this was someone who is still, around in some sense.
Wow. Well, I mean, I guess it's a kind thing to donate to historically unproblematic good guy Richard Lotax Kyanka.
Back before the troubles.
Yeah. I mean, that's something. I know bad people who got real sick and I still helped them out. I guess nobody deserves to suffer from disease unless they're like a goddamn Nazi or something.
Yeah, and this was before the Troubles, when he wasn't as known, like when the abuser stuff didn't really come out.
Yeah, you get a bit of forgiveness for that.
And so the reactions in the thread were very funny. Like, why did you reply to a post from 2013 from another thread in this thread? Wait, did Etherwind just get off his 100,000 probation? Thread's haunted. The crushing realization that I've been on something awful long enough to have someone go through an entire 100K within my tenure from someone who registered in 2011.
Yeah. That's crazy. You know,
I felt that one, yeah.
One thing I wanted to post recently is this, like, you want to feel old? Boxy has grandkids, and just see see how many people are like, oh no. Yeah.
I love that stuff, yeah. And also, on that note, it was very funny watching the news spread because the people in the thread recognized that it was very obviously a joke and him rolling with the punches after the fact. But the drama goons, I have one here where this guy, one of them was like, I'm in touch with Winston Payne, and I told him. Winston's response, lol, imagine stewing about an internet post for over a decade. So just looking at this person making a joke and be like, oh man, he must be so mad. Like,
yeah, you know, the right wing does that a lot too, where it's like, they'll say some psycho shit, and then somebody will go, no, it's not that, it's the other thing. And they'll go like, oh, imagine being obsessed with me. These people are obsessed with me. And it's like, no, you're just an asshole. Like, if I saw, you know, a man, like, eating shit off the ground while walking down the street, I would go, that's bad. He probably shouldn't be eating shit off the ground. I'm not obsessed with the shit eater. I just saw it, and it's probably bad that he's doing it. That's all.
Oh, yeah, no, I see that a lot in the forums, like drama goons using living rent-free in someone's head to describe being obnoxious enough that people remember them and they have a reputation.
Yeah, like there's the comic version of that where it's just like a guy pissing himself on stage and everybody's pointing and laughing at him and he's very smug going, rent-free. These people are obsessed with me. It's like, no, you're pissing yourself. That's what we're laughing at.
Yeah. So good. Yeah, this is a footnote. This was kind of interesting. This was the first time I saw something blow up from Blue Sky. I don't use Blue Sky, but yeah, this was kind of the post that like got so sourced and everything and kicked off. It was by a Sasha Stronach, who is a published author. She says, in 2013, I saw a man get a $100,000 probation on the Something Awful forums, and today I saw him come off probation and immediately pick up the same argument. Quoting a reply from 2013, absolute next level hater. I can't even imagine. My man is the Count of Monty posters. And
really funny.
Very good. Yeah, I did want to shout her out there because, yeah, like she mentioned in her follow-up, she talks about how the book she has published was started off in the creative convention. So it's very likely that she knew Etherwind from Thunderdome, that they were people who posted there as fiction writers. And from there, they, like, you know, that's how they knew them. So, like, when I mentioned Something Awful being a bunch of different fiefdoms, that's a great example of that. There's this thriving little creative writing community that I never really read or pay attention to, but all these people know each other and they cross-pollinate in interesting ways, and some of them are published authors now because of that.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the thing about Something Awful that Manson USA was like, Manson USA, I would see people in the news and in the music and in like their own art stuff. Like, it was just kind of the same people everywhere. You would see, maybe you wouldn't see X or Y in certain places, but you know, like it was one big clubhouse with very few walls, and Something Awful was like, no, this is a vast estate with many, many rooms to be in.
Our previous guest, Hot Dad, mentioned like writing erotica from a thing they found, and they're like, yeah, Something Awful does have a very, I should probably look into that more. I'm sure there's more interesting stories to come out of there. But yeah, so from there it blows up and it makes the rounds on the usual content mills like Hacker News. But I do want to shout out that PC Gamer article by Joshua Wolins because it was very well written. They gave a lot of context, they did good research. You could tell the author is someone who reads Something Awful because, like I mentioned in the previous episode, like, they even make the joke on there, no, I am not revealing my username. So
right.
Shout out to the article, it's good. And you know it's good because Etherwind himself endorsed it. He registered a Blue Sky account after that post blew up, and he replied and started talking about it. And one of the things is him saying here, this is the best article I've read on events. And for the record, I'm glad that they actually realized the post that got me $100,000 was a very caustic joke rather than an actual wish of harm. So he's coming back and sort of doing commentary now, which is a really interesting angle on this. Like, he showed up a day afterwards, like I mentioned. He wrote this Google Doc. He said, of myself, I only have this to say. And he dropped a 4-page Google Doc here. So I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I'll do the highlights here really quick.
Yeah, let's see what they got to say. This is Etherwind's reverse manifesto, I guess I would call it. I used to be a deeply angry man. It's not that surprising. Wounded animals often lash out at the world around them. Spend time looking after the homeless and you will inevitably witness someone trash a shelter bathroom. The angriest will kick the sink and shatter the porcelain bowl. Most smear shit on the walls, wash their hands, and walk out like nothing happened. Some house people will do this too. They all do it for the same reason. You might call it spite at a world that's treated them unfairly, but the reality is they do it for a sense of control. That is, a sense that they actually exist, and that despite at all their dysfunction, they can still leave a mark on other people's lives. This you must know when you spend time with despairing people, accepting it as a price of contributing to their well-being. In no way does accepting this absolve them of their actions and their distress. We are still, all of us, accountable for who we choose to be under the weight of ourselves. The unhoused man who destroys a bathroom for reasons we can understand is still culpable for the act of selfish and self-destruction. Etherwind is still a fucking asshole. I'm still Etherwind. Except I'm not. Not anymore. Not in the ways that matter. Would you believe me if I said that I wanted to be permabanned? I really did. I didn't know that I wanted to be, not at first, not until after the first probation came down. 100,000 hours, 11 years. The moment I saw it, I felt something inside that I can only describe as intense relief. I remember reaching out through IRC to the moderator who did it and saying, fair enough. What's next? And he goes on from here, but that's one, very reflective and very well written. And I would honestly send me this link because I do want to read the rest of it.
That's why I was sorry. This was when we had to rush. I was going to read the whole thing. It's really good.
Okay, yeah, because it goes on and just a lot of abusive things happening in their life and numbness and being an asshole and fuck. This is all very relatable. That's
why I said I was excited about this one.
Yeah, that's wild, man. This is very... We'll drop the link to this in the chat because what an interesting thing to say and how lovely it is that they put these thoughts together, and I'm glad that they've changed. I'm sorry that they were what they were and that they were doing the things that they were doing, but, being an asshole on the internet is a bummer, but it's not a physical crime, right?
As someone who has had to do this, something like this, I'll be much more direct and under duress, and as opposed to a decade after the fact. I found this super relatable, and a lot of the stuff they said was exact mirrors with things that I said in mine, and it was just I really felt for this person. That's why I was because we talk so much about people online who don't get better, and this being someone who is I've grown since then, I've done better. I'm glad that happened to me. It's exactly what you want to see, and that's why I was this is a redemption story because this feels very sincere and good in a way that it's hard to fake something like this. We've seen a lot of bullshit non-apologies, especially in these last couple episodes.
Absolutely. So. And what's funny is I just yesterday, I believe, I got a email from someone who was a good friend of mine in my freshman and sophomore year of high school, way back, baby Winslow years. And I mean, one thing that not a lot of people know about me, because I've not distanced myself from it, but it's no longer a huge part of my life, but rapid and proliferous creative output was the name of the game for me. I realize I make a lot of things now, but I was writing gobs of poetry. I was writing 3,000 words a week for my creative writing class and taking all these crazy fucking goth ass photos and special effects and being a little creepy little ghoul dressing up and looking like a freak and taking all these photos and making art and stuff like that. And this person was right alongside me, kind of critiquing it and analyzing it in a very thoughtful way. And they reached out to me and they were just I found you on TikTok and I watched all your stuff and I'm just so proud to see that you're still doing what you were doing in high school, but better. And it was whoa, it hit me so hard because I was that young me, there's parts of young me that I'm really proud of. There's photos and things that I've written that I still look back at and go that was really cool. I wish I had that edge that, I did back then. But I was also such an asshole and I was very egocentric and I had all of these thorns built up around the core of sweetness that I wanted to keep in myself. And to have somebody from that period of my life who fell out of my life after high school, or I mean, very later in high school, and go like, hey, I look back on you fondly, was just like so meaningful to me. Because I that's why this thing hits for you and for me, is to have these experiences with being an aggressive, embarrassing prick and changing it for ourselves and looking back on it,
Yeah, like sincerely, like some of the most meaningful like interactions I've ever had on the internet were people apologizing to me.
Yeah.
Like, from the Flimping Awful forums, like people being like, you were obviously going through some shit. I'm glad you're better now. Like that is sincerely like such a sweet and neat, nice thing. And like so much of the show and the stuff we talk about being like that, just, yeah, I'm very happy that you're through it. That's the best case scenario. You want people to get better.
I had an ex who, things ended poorly. Actually, this happened with a couple of them. Things ended pretty poorly. And, I had I would say a pretty manipulative, abusive ex throughout my years in college. And, she reached out to me and we patched things over to a certain degree and then moved on, with our lives. And it was one of those things where it's like, I was an asshole and she was like, yeah, and I was pretty much an asshole too. And we just moved on. There's another lady who did that same thing. Was like, hey, I'm really sorry how all that ended. And I'm like, hey, yeah, that makes sense. Me too. I hope that you're well. And then she immediately blocked me on everything, which I'm like, hey, I respect that too.
Yeah.
I get that you don't want me as a part of your heart anymore, because even somebody who any of my big exes, if they were just a follower of mine and I had to see their life, yeah, but that would, even if I'm I have nothing to do with you and I want nothing of your life, I do not want to be with you, there would be a small annoying part of me that's just that could have been my life if things had gone in a different way. And I don't like thinking like that all the time. I want to think about the life that I actually fucking live.
Yeah, you don't want to spend time on something that's not going to go anywhere. Emotional energy.
That's so funny.
Yeah. And just at the very end, they do mention that they set a calendar reminder, and then when the probation expired, they just logged in and did the reply, and that they don't ever pretend to go back and a friend sent them the responses. So just, yeah, and looking around, they are a published author. They said that they're not going to link their books to the Etherwind name because they're not that person anymore they want to be associated with. But, just again, with that thing we always talk about with art and the power of creativity and defining yourself by making things, the fact that they were as someone who was already into creative writing at the time, that now it's something that they do more and it's something they found meaning and value in. That's very good and cool. And I think that echoes a lot of things we've talked about on here.
Yeah, I mean, this is a funny turn of events for our pod, because this is definitely someone who, at the very start, I'm like, this is so funny, I'm glad that this happened, and then pretty immediately I'm like, God damn it, and then now we're back to thinking this is nice. I'm glad that we're here, Yeah, I'm
exactly.
glad that they did that they had some reflection, and I hope that this is I don't think that there's any psycho fucking droipers listening to this right now, but there's probably people in the middle who listen to this pod who might have had a past where they were a dickhead, and I hope that this shows you that there is a way forward, but not without looking backwards. You need to be able to reflect on your own self and why you did the things that you did. Because there's things that I did in my past that I'm I need to understand why Winslow would do that so that I will never do that again. Right?
Yeah.
So
still try, a lot of things we still try and figure them out. That's part of what reflecting on yourself is as a person.
Yeah. You have to just be ready to forgive others and understand yourself and eventually forgive yourself and then move on, and I swear to God, I promise you'll be happier. You'll be so much happier on the other end.
Yeah, it takes a lot of work, and you might have to make some big changes to your life, but it is totally worth it.
Right, you're gonna have to shave your head. Yeah, you're gonna have to shave your head, and you're gonna have to become castrated. But
yeah, you gotta buy these. This is the official "I'm from the internet" shoes from New Balance. Yeah,
yeah, it's a whole thing. But
speaking of reflection, though, I have the goon replies to this when they found out about it. So the Wicked Zoga. It would take 11 years to read that shit. Looking at this very sincere, heartfelt apology that moved us both. Just glancing at it reminded me of the most annoying parts of reading David Foster Wallace. And we have one here from Platystemin. It's less bad than Guy Mann's video essay, but no one wants to be mentioned in the same breath as that.
It does not surprise me that the people who are still in the cesspool are a little salty about the guy who got banned from being in the cesspool.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with them, but to be fair, Etherwind had 11.4 years to prepare, and I wrote mine in a weekend while I was going through a breakup, so...
Yeah, I can tell.
Yeah.
When we first started this pod, somebody sent me a link to that, like, be careful working with Jay, and I watched the first, 45 minutes of your video apology, and I was just like, oh, so you were just, rude online?
Yeah.
Dude, I know a woman who killed her son. I think that would be a bigger thing than the fucking, you know what I mean? Yeah, you were rude online. That sucks. You're not that dude anymore. We're fine. Let's move on.
Thank you. And I feel like whoever it was that was doing that has stopped, because that was a thing for a while. It was anytime I was working with someone or being read, it'd be like, yeah, I think it might have been a furry. I'm not going to go into it on here, but I'm glad that they're not doing it anymore.
Yeah. Well, hopefully they, realize that they are doing the same way that you did, the same way that Etherwind did, same way that we all did.
I hope so, but anyways, like I mentioned earlier, if I hadn't been permabanned for doing the Twitter account, I would be coming off probation on August 10th, 2032. So I don't know if the show will still be going around then, but if we're still making something, we'll have to do something to commemorate that.
I think plan for everything to become a big thing, and you'll have a lot more fun with it, because you don't want to just be caught in 2032, which 2032 will happen. Who knows if you and I will still be doing this? Maybe we'll have adapted it to something else. But yeah. Set a date in your calendar, man. Let's talk.
Good idea. Just like Etherwind, yeah.
Yeah. Tell me what you got going on, man.
Yeah, just the normal. I'm wrapping up the rough draft of my book. I'm really excited about it. Not for the boring and hard part of editing it and everything, but it'll come as it goes. Life's been doing good. I'm just on social media everywhere working on my stuff, and I got this. I guested on a couple shows. I guested on the Ain't Shit show a couple weeks ago, and I just guested on 48 Minutes of Dogs Barking, which is hosted by two old something awful goons. So it was very fun. I was on to talk about Fur Affinity because the owner died recently, so that was in the news, and just get to have some fun stuff there. My recording quality isn't great because they use a different setup to us, and I think it was getting my laptop's microphone and not my good one, but you can still make me out mostly. So yeah, I had fun.
That's good, man. Yeah, you can hear me here. I'm doing this, and by the time this comes out, I won't be in Pittsburgh anymore, but I will, I'll be on some other shows. I'll be at the Oddities and Curiosities in Kansas City, and I have a couple other shows I'll be posting about on my, Instagram and things like that. I have a bunch of new stickers that are coming out on my website, as well as at least one new pin and a few other new home goods that I have yet to release, but those will be out soon as they arrive here. Yeah, and future collaborations are being figured out as we go along. Still making the card game. You can pre-order all of that on my website. I'm at Winslow Domain on Twitter, and my website is winslowdomain.com, and I'm on Instagram at Calculations. And if you are really into hearing us talk about bullshit, we have a Patreon, and if you give any money at all to the Patreon, you get access to our entire catalog of back episodes, which some of them are longer than the fucking main episodes. So
it's very funny.
Yeah, it's very fun. It's not strictly something awful, but we go into a lot of other stories, and it's a good time. So anything at all. And if you have any ideas for our show or our Patreon or anything like that, please hit us up at iftipod@gmail.com, and that's also iftipod on Twitter as well.
And also, I don't think I mentioned it on mic yet, but the Zyborn Clock episode is officially on the horizon. I found an original source that's going to be really fun and useful, and also we've got a good guest for it. So it won't be for a little bit. I still got to knock out Danganronpa before that, but it's going to be coming. It's going to be great.
Yeah, I have intentionally kept myself entirely ignorant of what the fuck that means. So I'm very interested in finding out what either of those are. So, yeah, this is fun, man. Thank you again for doing this. And thanks, everybody, for listening. And please tell your friends, like, review, you know, the whole fucking thing. So, we'll catch you soon, all right? I'm From the Internet is created by Jaybrandstetter and Wins the Domain. Edited by Steve Brown. Music by Steve Isbrook.